Welcome back. This is part 3 of the needle felted chipmunk. So next we're going to continue and make the head. I'm just going to take a chunk of core wool and just pull off a nice little strip. Then I'm going to place this around the neck and I'm just going to begin wrapping it up towards the front of the head, and I stop about halfway and then I bring it back down the back of the neck. Just going to take my felting mat and just felt down the end of the wool. Now we're going to add a bit of wool to build up some bulk towards the back of the head. So I'm just going to take a small chunk of core wool and I'm just going to roll that down to create a small pillow. Just felt it a few times so that it holds together. Then I'm just going to carefully lift this from the mat and just stretch it out a little bit. Then I'm going to place this so that the centre of it lines up with the back of the head and bring the sides around. Just felt down those ends. It looks a little bit odd at the moment, but what we're going to do is we're going to continue felting until this is nice and secure. And what we're going to do now is we're going to felt down the back of the head and the top of the head, and as we felt the top of the head down there's going to be two little gaps here. We're going to keep them just as little gaps for now, so focusing on the back and the top of the head. So now that the back of the head and the top of the head is all felted down, you'll notice that there's two gaps are still on either side. So what we're going to do next is take a needle and we're just going to felt into those gaps to make sure they stay nice and prominent. I'm going to do the same on both sides. And then now we're going to work on felting the sides of the head, and every so often we're just going to go back in and just keep making sure that the gaps are nice and prominent. So just working on the side of the head, just felting that down and then turning it over and going over the gaps again. And again. And we're just going to do this on both sides. So now that the sides have been felted in and the wool is all nice and compressed, we're going to really focus on the gaps again, because this is where the eyes are going to sit. So I'm just going to take the needle and just really felt that down, just making a little indentation for where the eyes are going to go. I'll just move the mat so hopefully you can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to do the same again on the other side. Just really felt down those gaps. Here's how it looks with the gaps felted down. As you can see, there's still two clear indentations where the eyes are going to sit. So to make the eyes, I'm going to be using wool, but I know that some people prefer to use the glass or plastic beads for the eyes instead. So if you prefer to use those, then of course just switch out the wool for the plastic beads or the glass beads. So I'm just going to take a very small piece of black wool and I'm just going to roll it between my thumb and fingers and just roll it into a nice little ball. And then I'm going to place it into one of the indentations and just begin to felt that down. Just felting all around the edges and bringing the wool from the edges towards the centre of the eye. And and this helps to keep it nice and rounded. And then as you're going to start and firm up the eye, I prefer to switch to a smaller needle. So this is a 42 gauge needle, and this just helps to firm up the eye without losing too much shape. So I'm just going to keep felting this until it's nice and firm, and then I'm going to do the same again for the other eye. Now both of the eyeballs have been felted, and here's what it's looking like. Now I've felted them really firm so that they hold the shape really well, and once that's done we can move on to adding some colour. So these are the colours that I'm going to be using. Unfortunately I don't have any specific names for these colours as I've blended them up myself, but they are all blended using wool from the felt box. So I have a variety of brown tones ranging from a beige to a darker brown. You can of course use whatever colours you like for yours, but then I've also got some white wool which will be used for the belly, and then I've also got the same pinky shade that we used for the hands and feet, and this will be used for the nose, the insides of the ears, and just to create a little bit of detail around the mouth. We're going to start off with the lightest brown sort of beigey colour, and I'm just going to pull off a small piece, and this is going to create one of the cheeks. So I'm just going to roll it up and just place it on the mat, felt it just a couple of times so that it holds its shape. Then I'm going to place this with one end towards the nose at the very front of the eye, and I'm going to curve it around towards the back of the head. Then I'm just going to felt down both ends. And now I'm going to focus on felting the rest of it down. So I'm going to start by squishing it against the face and just felt in underneath. And then I'm going to start felting down this really bulky bit here. As you make your way up to the eye, you can felt down the wool around the eye, especially at the back, and make sure that's nice and tightly felted. And then when it comes to working around the eye, just very carefully take your needle and felt down the wool away from the eye. And then just continue to felt until it's nice and firmly felted. And here's how it looks with one of the cheeks felted. So we're just going to repeat the same steps for the other side. So now that both cheeks have been felted, we're going to add some more wool. We're going to use some of the same colour that we've just used for the cheeks, and we're going to pull off a really small piece, just a little bit smaller than what we used for the cheeks. And again, I'm going to roll this up nice and tight and felt it a couple of times for it to hold together. Then I'm going to carefully lift this from the mat and I'm going to place it above the eye, just like before, with one end towards the nose, and just felt that down, and then curve it around the eye towards the back of the head and just felt the end down. And now I'm just going to continue felting this wall until it's just like the cheek and nice and firmly felted. Then repeat the same steps for the other eye. Don't worry if the eyes are still looking a bit big and bulky at the moment. We are going to be working on them a bit more later on, but for now we're going to be moving on to the white wool. I'm just going to pull off a small piece of the white and I'm just going to place it onto the mat, and using my finger as a guide, I'm not going to felt near the finger, I'm going to felt around it, away from it, but I'm going to use it as a guide for the shape. So just following the shape of my finger, I'm going to felt around. Then the edges of the wool, I'm going to fold those over and felt those down. And just keep felting. Then I'm going to very carefully lift it from the mat, flip it over, and I'm going to felt it again. I'm just going to felt it a few more times, but focusing on the top half. And I'm now going to very carefully lift this from the mat, and then the rounded end, where it curved around the top of the finger, is going to get placed towards the nose at the front. I'm just going to felt that down, and then both sides are going to come around the side of the face and onto the cheeks. Just felt the end down, same on the other side. And this is going to form the bottom jaw. So now we're going to focus on felting down the edges of the wool. What I'm going to do is the end of the wool, I'm just going to make sure that's over the nose and just felt it a couple of times so that it stays in place. And then I'm going to go over the edges of the wool and just really felt those down. Same again on the other side. Then I'm going to come around the nose and felt down all that wool as well. Then once they're nice and secure, then you can go ahead and felt down the rest of the remaining wool. Sometimes it's easier for you to tilt the head back so that you can work on it a little bit easier. And then after felting, you can just go ahead and tilt the head back down. Now we're going to be working on the top section of the mouth. So I'm going to take another piece of the white wool, but this time I'm just going to take a really small piece and I'm just going to place it on the mat and felt down just a few times and create a sort of rounded shape. It doesn't need to be perfect at all. Just lift it up, and then we're going to place this over one side of the nose and felt it straight down the middle. And then we're going to flip it over and we're going to curve the other end around and felt that down as well. We're going to felt down the top section, and for the bottom section we're going to felt that down, but as we're felting we're going to create a sort of smile line for where we want the mouth to sit. So I'm just felting along while bringing it up towards the eye at the same time. I've just moved the felting mat so hopefully you can see it a little bit better, but basically what I'm doing is I'm just taking the needle and felting in the end of the wool and bringing it up to form a smile. But then once you're happy with the rough shape, then you can continue to felt it until firm. I like to felt around it from all angles to try and help keep that rounded shape. So here's what mine looks like now that it's been felted. I'll just show you from a few different angles. And I'm just going to repeat the same again for the other side. And here's how it looks with both sides felted. Again, I will just show you from different angles so you can get a clearer look of how it looks. And now we're going to work on the nose. I'm just going to take some of that peachy pink colour and just pull off a small piece. I'm just going to roll it between my fingers. Then I'm going to place it on the mat and I'm just going to felt down one end and just round it off by pulling in the edges of the wool. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'm going to very carefully lift it from the mat, and then the end that we've just rounded off, that's going to become the nose. So the rounded end I'm going to place towards the front, and I'm just doing it so it overhangs just very slightly. Then I'm just going to felt down the looser end. And then for the nose, I'm going to grab the end of the wool and just felt that in to the top of the nose area. And then felt in the sides. And as you're felting, just keep inspecting to make sure that you're happy with the shape. And then just felt it down until it's nice and secure. And here's how he's looking with the nose all felted down. Now it may look a little bit strange with the pink coming so far up the head, but don't worry, this is going to get covered up and blended in. I'm going to take some of the light beige coloured wool, the same wool that we used to make the cheeks and the top of the head. I'm just going to take a really small piece and just fluff up the fibres. Then I'm going to place this on the mat and just felt them down a few times. and this is going to create a little sheet of wool. I'm just going to grip this nice and tight and just pull away some of the excess fibres from the edges. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to place this over the nose and in between the eyes, and I'm going to place it not so that it covers the end of the nose, but so that it covers sort of a little bit pulled back and then up towards the eyes. Then I'm just going to felt all of this down. Of course, when you get up to the eyes, you don't want to felt it into the eyes. Just manoeuvre the wool and felt around them instead. As you're felting, if you feel like you have a little bit too much wool, don't worry, just grip it nice and tight and pull away some of the excess. We're going to use the same technique of felting a little sheet of wool, and we're just going to place some over the nose to bring the colour down a little bit further, and we're also going to place some along the harsh line just to blend it out and make it a lot more smoother. So just like before, I'm going to take some more of that same colour. I'm just going to pull off a small piece and just fluff up the fibres and place them on the mat and felt them down. I'm going to very carefully pull this from the mat, and again I'm going to grip it nice and tight and just pull away some of the loose fibres from the edges. And now I'm going to place this over the white part of the nose of the chipmunk. I'm not going to do it all the way to the front, I'm going to do it about 3/4 of the way, and just begin felting this down, and it's going to create a nice smooth blend. And same again to blend out this area. And just place that over and felt it down. And here's what it looks like once it's felted. I'm just going to move the mat so you can see a little bit better. As you can see, it's got a nice smooth blend and it looks a lot more natural instead of having the harsh lines. So we're going to repeat the same again and add some colour to the nose and to cover this line here. Next, we're going to start giving some shape to the eyes by creating some eyelids. So again, we're going to use the same colour, and I'm just going to pull off a small piece, and I'm going to roll it up just using my thumb and fingers, and just roll it into a small strip. Then I'm going to place one end of this strip at the front of the eye and just felt that into place. Then I'm going to curve it around to the back of the eye, and I'm going to felt that down as well. And then what I like to do is I like to felt the edge of the wool that's closest to the head. I like to felt that down first. Just make sure that's nice and secure. And then the rest of the wool is what I'm going to play around with and just shape the eyelid. So take your time with this and just keep playing around, see how you like the wool to sit. Just doing lots of small and gentle pokes until you're happy with it. And then once you're happy with how it sits, we're going to take another small piece of the same colour, and again we're going to roll it between thumb and fingers, and this one's going to create the bottom eyelid. So just like before, place one end at the front of the eye, then curve it around towards the back. Felt down the edge that's closest to the head. And then shape the inner edge. And now that the wool has been added to both the top and the bottom, I'm just going to take a needle and just sort of outline the eyelid by poking the needle around it, just to make it really stand out. And same for the top, just small, steady pokes to outline the eye. And here's a closer look at the difference that the eyelids make. So we're just going to repeat the same process for the other eye. So now we're going to start and add some details to the eye. So I'm going to take some of the darkest brown wool that I'm using, and I'm just going to pull off a really small thin strip. I'm just going to roll that up nice and tight so that it becomes a bit like thread. You want this to be nice and thin, and then place one end at the front of the eye in the inner corner, and then just felt this down and hold it nice and tightly, and we're going to felt it all the way around the eye. Just take your time with this, make sure it's nice and neat. And as we come to the outer corner of the eye, I'm just going to bring it just a little bit past the eye and then bring it back down towards the bottom. Again, I'm holding it nice and tightly as I'm felting. And then just bring it all the way back around to the front of the eye. I'm just going to pull off the excess wool and make sure that end's felted down. And next I'm going to take a very tiny piece of the pinky coloured wool I'm just going to roll that up between my thumb and finger, and I'm going to place this towards the inner corner of the eye, and I'm going to felt that down just above the brown line that we've just created. So as I'm felting, what I'm doing is I'm pushing the pink wool behind the brown wool. As you keep felting, it will become less visible, but that helps it to look a lot more natural. I'm just going to take another tiny piece of the pink wool, and this time I'm going to place it towards the outer corner, again at the bottom of the eye. I'm just going to repeat the same steps by felting it slightly just above the brown, and then pushing it into the brown wool, well, to behind the brown wool, sorry. Just taking my time, again, to make sure it's all nice and neat. And this just adds a very nice bit of extra detail into the eye. I'm now going to take a very tiny piece of white wool. And again, I'm just going to roll that up between my fingers and just place that over the eye. Now, I don't like to have a perfectly round highlight. What I like to do is just felt it down and sort of follow the natural shape of the eye. It just helps it to look a lot more natural. And of course, the more white you add, the brighter the highlight will be. But I don't want mine to be too bright, so what I'm doing, as I'm felting down the wool, I'm just very carefully picking up little tiny fibres of the black wool and just blending that into the white to help dull down the colour. And here's what the eye looks like. So now we're just going to repeat the same steps for the other eye. And that is most of the detailing for the eyes all finished. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bit of detail to the mouth and help that stand out more. So I'm just going to take a piece of pink wool, I'm just going to fluff it up a little bit, and I'm going to place it just below the nose and towards the mouth. I'm just going to felt this down to give it a bit of colour. I'm also going to add a little tiny bit of pink to the chin. I'm just going to take one of my larger needles and I'm just going to go all the way down and define where the mouth is. So a line straight down the centre from the nose and then all the way around into the smile line. I'm going to take a little piece of the dark brown wool I'm going to make sure it's really, really thin. And then I'm just going to felt this along those lines to help define them. Pull off the end and go down the other side. Then I'm just going to take a little bit more of that pink wool. I'm going to place it directly over everything we've just felted and felt that down again, just to help blend it in and make it look a bit more natural. So looking at the shape of the mouth, I've decided that I want mine to be a little bit more compressed here. So all I'm going to do is take my needles and just felt down either side. Just keep checking the shape and just felting. We're now going to be adding some more colour to the face, and we're going to be layering up some different tones of brown to add a bit more detail. So this is the beigey colour that I used for the most of the head, and then these are the colours that I'm going to be using to add some shading and some detail. And again, don't worry too much if you don't have a huge variety of tones that you can use. I'd recommend having the colour that you used for the head, having a medium brown, and then having a colour that's in between the two. So I'm going to start with taking the colours that are in between the two, so taking my middle shades, and I'm just going to bring my felting mat, and I'm just going to pull off really small pieces of wool. I'm just going to fluff it up and then place it onto the mat. And because I'm using two shades, I'm going to use the lighter one and then the one that's slightly darker. I'm just going to pull off a small piece and do the same again. Just fluff it up, then I'm going to place it just over the previous shade that I've put down. But again, if you're only using the one shade, then that's completely fine too. I'm just going to lightly felt that. And just very carefully lift that up from the mat and grip it nice and tight, and just pull away some of those excess fibres. So I'm going to take this with the lighter end pointing towards the nose, and I'm just going to place it over the cheek and just begin felting it all down. And here's what it looks like with that wool felted down. It might be a little bit harder to see on camera, but adding those small changes and those small different shades of colour can help to add to the realism. Instead of taking it from just being one solid flat colour, you've got all these different tones, which helps to give it a more realistic effect. And so I'm just going to repeat the same step for the other side. I'm also going to add a little bit of shading over the top of the nose. So just again using the same technique by placing the wool on the mat and felting it down. and then carefully lift and pull the edges. Then I'm just going to place it over the nose, and again I'm just going to felt that down. I'm just trying to avoid getting too close to the eyes because I want to try and leave a nice lighter patch around the eye. But don't worry, if you do end up getting too close, you can always go back in and add a bit of lighter wool if needs be. And here's what he's looking like so far. So now we're going to be adding some of the medium brown wool and we're going to create some stripes. I'm going to take a very tiny piece. I'm just going to roll it up between my fingers and then place it just behind the eye, out towards the back of the head. Then I'm going to felt it down from the eye and working my way back. I'm just going to do this very gently and very slowly so that I can make it as precise as possible. I'm going to go back in and add just a little bit more wool over the top of that. And I'm going to do the same again for the inner corner. So again, just taking a really small piece and just rolling it between my fingers. Then place it at the inner corner of the eye and towards the nose. Again, just felt that down nice and slowly. And here's what it looks like once it's felted. Now I may decide to darken this up a little bit more later on, but for now I'm just going to continue adding the brown and see how it looks. I'm going to take a very small piece of the brown again. I'm just working with very small sections because you can always add more as you go. And again I'm just going to roll it up slightly between my fingers. Then I'm going to place it underneath the eye, leaving a small gap for the lighter wool. I'm just going to felt that down at one end. And again I'm going to leave a small gap just underneath the eye so that the lighter wool can show through. But I'm going to bring around the brown and also leave a gap between the brown stripe of the eye and the brown that you're laying down now. Again, I'm just felting this nice and slowly so that I have more control over the needle and where the wool is going to sit. I'm going to add another bit of brown, just continuing on from where we were felting before, out towards the back of the head. I'm going to repeat this again on the other side. And so once both sides have been felted, we're just going to do the same again on the top of the eye. Just take a small strip of wool, leave a small gap around the eye, and just slowly felt that down. And again, leave a gap above the line coming from the eye. And just felt it all down. Do the same on both sides. I'm going to take some more of the brown wool and I'm just going to fill in the top of the head and a little bit down the nose. I'm just going to fluff it up and just roll it between my thumb and fingers. Just place it over the top of the head and make sure it's all really well felted. And here's how the chipmunk is looking with all the brown added to the top of the head as well. So for now we're going to leave the head there and we're going to start working on adding some colour to the body. I'm going to start working on the body by working on the chest and the belly. So I'm just going to open out the arms just so that it's a little bit easier to access. I'm also going to tilt the head back, and then we're going to be adding white wool all the way down. So I'm just going to take some of the white, just roughly how much I'm going to need to cover the belly and the chest. Then I'm going to very lightly just felt it down and create a sheet of wool. I'm just going to very carefully lift this from the mat and then place it over the body. Then once it's in position, I'm just going to felt it a few times, straight down the middle. Just to make sure that it's attached. And now I'm going to keep felting until it's all nice and secure. If you find that there's a bit too much wool on one side, just grip it nice and tightly and pull away any excess. So after making sure that all the belly and chest is well felted, I'm going to go back in with the lightest beige colour, the shade that we used for making the head. And I'm just going to pull off really small pieces. Then I'm going to create little sheets by felting them on the mat. Very gently lifting it up and pulling away the edges. Then I'm going to place these just along the edge of the body, very slightly leaning towards the chest and the belly area. So I'm going to line the entire body with this light beige colour. So that colour has now been added all the way around the body. So we're going to take a little bit more of the same beigey colour. I'm just going to fluff it up and place it on the mat. Then I'm going to take a slightly darker colour and just place that just so it's slightly leaning over the beige colour, and just felt it a few times. Then I'm going to lift this up from the mat and I'm going to place it over the arm. So I'm just going to stretch the arms out again. Then the lighter end is going to get placed towards the hand. Just felt that down. And then the rest of the wool is going to get curved around the arm and felted into place. Same with the top, just bring that around and felt it down. And I'm just going to keep felting this and then repeat the same again for the other arm. I'm just going to put the arms back into position, and now we're going to start adding some shading. So using the same colours that we used on the face, we're going to add a bit of depth, a bit more colour to the body. So again, I'll be using 2 different middle shades, but if you only have the one, then that's no problem at all. So I'm just going to put the chipmunk to one side, and I'm going to pull off some of the wool. Just fluff it up and place it on the mat, and then because I'm using 2 shades, I'm going to take some of the slightly darker one, and again just place that over the edge, just overlapping it nicely, and felt it down. Then I'm going to lift this from the mat, grip it nice and tight and pull away the edges. Then I'm going to place this over the body, but I'm going to pull it back a little bit from where we've added the first beige colour. I'm just going to pull it back a little bit and then felt it down. So you can see that the beige colour is still visible, then we have the slightly darker colour pulled back, and it's creating a nice smooth blend. So again, I'm going to do this all the way around the entire body. So we're now going to take some of the medium brown, the same one that we used to create the stripes on the head. And just like before, I'm going to pull off a small piece, just fluff it up and felt it onto the mat. I'm just very carefully going to lift this up, and again I'm going to squeeze it nice and tight and just pull away some of the excess fibres. Then I'm going to place this over the back of the chipmunk, stretching right down from the back of the head all the way to the tail. Then I'm just going to felt this down until it's attached really well. I'm also going to add some of the same brown to the back of the head as well. So again, same technique, I'm just going to felt it onto the mat and create a sheet of wool. Carefully lift it up and pull off some of the excess fibres. Then I'm going to place this over the back of the head and just blend that into the body. If you find there's a bit too much wool, don't worry, just hold it nice and tight and pull away any of the excess. And then just continue felting until it's really well felted. And here's how it's looking so far. I think I'm actually going to add a little bit more brown, just coming from the back down towards the top of the arms. I'm just going to take a small bit, just very lightly felt that down. Then I'm just going to place it from the back down towards the tops of the arm. Just felt that down. Then I'm going to do the same again on the other side. So after felting, I'm quite happy now with how the body looks and the colouring. So the next step is going to be working on the tail. For the tail, I'm going to be using the middle and the medium brown. So I'm going to start with the lighter colour. I'm just going to take my mat and just pull off some of the wool. I'm just going to fluff up the fibres and just begin laying it out on the mat. I'm just going to measure the length of it by lining up the chipmunk's tail. I just want to add a tiny bit more. And then on top of that, I'm going to take some of the medium brown and just very lightly stretch it out and put it in the very middle. Then I'm going to felt this down. I'm going to very carefully lift it from the mat and just like always, squeeze it nice and tight and just pull away a few of those excess fibres. Then I'm going to take the chipmunk and lie him flat, and I'm going to place one end at the bottom of the chipmunk and all the way down the tail. So I'm going to begin very gently, just felting it on all the way down. And then you can flip it over and just bring around the ends and felt them as well. And again, if at this point you feel like there's still too much wool, just grip it tightly and pull away some of the excess. But just fold that around and felt down the edges. Just very carefully lift it up and bring in the wool from the end and felt that into the end of the tail. And then from here, just continue to felt it until it's nice and secure. After felting, just check the ends of the tail. I'm just going to pull it back and just felt down underneath a little bit more. And then bend it the other way. And I can see there's quite a harsh line here where the two wools join. So all I'm going to do is take some more of the medium brown. Just create a very small sheet. And then I'm just going to place that over where the body and the tail meet. Then just felt that down. And then once that's felted, you can either keep the tail as it is, or if you'd like to make it a little bit fluffier, then I just like to take a brush and just very gently brush it out. I'm not brushing it too much. I'm just very, very lightly brushing it, just to fluff up some of those fibres. And this is what it looks like after brushing. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my scissors and just trim off some of the longer fibres at the end, just to neaten it out a little bit. The chipmunk's really starting to take shape now. So next we're going to be adding the stripes down the back. And for this I'm using a dark brown wool and white wool. I'm just going to lay the chipmunk out on the mat and just pull the tail down. Then I'm going to pull off a nice strip of the dark brown wool. I'm just going to stretch it out, and I'm just going to very carefully roll it between my fingers, just so it sort of brings all those fibres in and makes it a little bit more compact. Then I'm going to lay it out across the back because we're going to do 2 stripes. So starting just below the back of the head, I'm going to felt down one end, bring it all the way down towards the tail. I'm just going to hold it tight and pull off this excess wool at the end. Then I'm just going to felt this down all the way. Also going to do the same on the other side. So just pulling off a strip of the brown wool, stretching it out and slowly rolling it between my fingers. And place down one end. Bring it around and felt it down. And we're going to do the same again with the white wool. We're just going to pull off a really small thin strip and roll it between thumb and fingers. We want the white to be a little bit thinner than the dark brown because it's going to sit over the brown, and we want it to sit so that you can still see the dark brown at the edges. So just place that straight over and felt it all the way down. And of course, same again on the other side. After felting, once you're happy with the stripes, then you can go ahead and lift up the tail again and just position it how you want it to sit. And next we're going to move on to making the ears. I'm going to use the same medium brown colour that we used for the head and the back of the chipmunk. So I'm just going to take a small piece and place it on the mat. Then very carefully I'm just going to mark out the shape of an ear using the needle. I'm just going to round off the top, and then the excess wool along the edges is going to get folded over and felted in. Then I'm going to keep felting until the wool starts to take shape. Then after felting quite a few times, I'm going to very carefully lift it from the mat, then turn it over, place it back down and felt again. The rounded end, I'm making sure that's felted really well, whereas the bottom, I want to keep this nice and loose to make it easier to attach the ears. I'm now going to take some of the peachy pink colour, the same one that we used for the hands and toes and the nose. I'm just going to place that on the ear up towards the top and the middle, and just very lightly felt that down. I'm just doing very light, gentle pokes, and then I'm going to flip it over, put it back down and felt it really well. Very carefully lift it from the mat and flip it back over, and I don't know if you can see on camera, but there's a lot of fuzzy fibres here, so all I'm going to do, take the scissors and just trim them. So this part is completely optional, but what I like to do to help get the ear really smooth and also to help get it really thin, is I like to take a pair of hair straighteners, or if you don't have any then you can also use an iron, and just very, very carefully apply some heat. I'm not holding it there very long at all, just very light taps, and it just really helps to smooth the piece and thin it out. Then I like to just go back in with the scissors and trim up the edges and get them nice and smooth. I've just made a second ear, and I thought I'd show you before I add the heat to it, just so you can see a little before and after of how much it really does thin and smooth out the wool. So of course, once you've made your first ear, make a second one, and then we'll continue from there. So once you have both ears ready, then we can start getting them ready to attach to the chipmunk. So I'm just going to take one of the ears and I'm going to grip it nice and tight. Then from the bottom I'm just going to pull away some of those looser fibres. And then I'm going to take the chipmunk and I'm going to place one side about halfway between the back of the eye and the back of the head. Then I'm just going to felt that into place. I'm not felting it super secure at the moment, I'm just pretty much tacking it in place while I position it, and then once we're happy we can felt it down a lot more. So with the back of the ear I'm going to curve that around and just felt that down as well. And then just check the positioning, and once you're happy with it then you can continue to felt and make sure it's really secure on the head. So as I've been felting, I've also been felting in around the edges of the ear, and this just helps to compress it and make it a little bit smaller. So once you're happy with it, repeat the same again for the other ear. And once both ears have been added, that is your chipmunk completed. So as always, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of your support. I hope to see you all again in the next one.